Right. Tonight I decided to read from read a story from the Torch book. Um, Torch stands for Tales of Remarkable and Courage and Hope. Title of this one is Counting My Blessings. I was 42 years old and had no idea I had cancer. I attended a baby shower on October 17, 2005. And when I returned home, I began to have pain in my abdominal. I was unable to sleep all night and contacted the physician on call on Sunday, October 18, 2005. After taking antibiotics and still not feeling any better on Monday, I called my physician. He recommended I go see him that morning. By that Monday, morning, my abdomen had started swelling. My regular doctor recommended I see a gynecologist. After doing so, it was recommended I have a sonogram and a CAT scan. Before I received the results of the test, I went to lunch with my mom and sister. As I was eating lunch, I received a phone call from my boss's wife asking how I was doing. She was vice president of a physicians group for a local hospital system. She recommended I see an oncologist and told me she would make sure I get in to see an oncologist specialist. I called and was able to get an appointment. I believe God was working in my life during this time. I initially had an appointment with my regular gynecologist who had recommended surgery. Prior to the phone call from my boss's wife, I had planned to have a regular physician perform my surgery and had canceled an appointment with the specialist. After my boss's wife called, I called the specialist back and my appointment had been given to another patient. The nurse said if I could come in at 7:30 a.m. the next morning, which would be Friday, October 22nd, 2005, the oncologist would see me. I believe God stepped in at this point to direct my steps. When I arrived at the oncologist's office, I was filling out paperwork. As I was sitting there with my mom and sister, an old friend walked in with his wife. He is a strong Christian man. As soon as he saw me, he hugged me and asked if I was there to see the doctor. I explained that I was. I knew from that point on that there would be more prayers for me. I met the oncologist who reviewed my test results. He sat with my mom and me, and explained that I would require surgery, that he would perform the surgery if I wanted him to. I must be honest and say that I was probably in shock up until this point. I had to have so many tests. At this point, I was so nervous as I had lived 42 years without even having any type of surgery, and I was facing the prospect of having major surgery. My surgery was scheduled for the next Friday, October 29th, 2005. The day arrived for my surgery, and I had a migraine. So much stress and not eating the night before the surgery had taken its toll. I arrived at the hospital with my husband, mom, and dad, brothers, sisters, and best friend. When it was time for me to go in to be prepped, my whole family stood up and formed a circle. We held hands while my brother prayed for my safekeeping and a successful surgery. The surgery took longer than expected, and my family was told that I had cancer. My doctor took my mom and husband into a room to tell them the news. My mom told me that they broke down, but they decided together that my mom would tell the rest of the family because Jerry was unable to talk about it at that point. I was finally brought to my room. I was still groggy from the anesthesia, but as I was wheeled into my room, I could see in the dim light my family surrounding my bed. My husband Jerry leaned over, and with tears in his eyes, he whispered to me how much he loved me. He then told me that they found cancer in one of my ovaries. As tears trickled out of my eyes, my dad leaned over and whispered in my ear that he would trade places with me if he could. I did not realize that while my family was waiting for me to come out of recovery, they had already made a list of who would be staying with me each night in the hospital, as they were going to take turns. When my sister Sherry stayed with me, she helped me bathe. My brother Cliff and my nephew John stayed with me another night. You never realize how much love your family has for you until they sacrifice their time and energy to help you get better. I felt so humbled by my family's love and caring attention. Looking back now, I realize that everyone around me was in shock. I know there are certain steps that most people go through when they find out they have cancer. It starts with anger at God and asking, why me? It then moves to feeling sorry for yourself because it is you. Then on to depression and many other emotions. They are hard to deal with, and many other emotions that are hard to deal with. I honestly never experienced any of those emotions. My first thought was, what do I need to do to fully recover? So began my amazing journey. I think that cancer is often harder on the loved ones around you. The one with cancer is often so involved in fighting the disease. Your loved ones often feel helpless in the fight. They struggle with how they can help you. They often don't realize that their just being there and praying for you daily is the best medicine they can give. When my oncologist came to see me to explain the results, he told me I had stage 1C ovarian cancer. I asked him what he recommended for my treatment. He said he thought I should have 6 chemo treatments to kill any cancer cells he may have missed during surgery. I agreed. Then began the long process of recovery from the surgery so that I would be ready for chemo. Since my husband worked during the week, we decided that I would stay with my parents during the week so they could take care of me, and that I would go home on the weekends to be with my husband. I must say my mom and dad were the best. I could not have done it without them. Mom made sure I ate well in order to gain back some of the weight that I had lost during my surgery and recovery. We started walking at the high school track in the afternoon and sitting on their front porch in the evenings. On the weekends, my husband Jerry would stop by and pick me up to take me home. He did all the grocery shopping and house cleaning and took care of our dog. My dog even mourned when I was not at home. I was truly blessed. God had much bigger plans for me. I decided before my chemo treatments started that I would shave my head. One of my fears was that I would be standing in the shower and a large clump of my hair would fall out of my hands and I would be devastated. So I made an appointment with my hairdresser to have my head shaved. Another thing I did not realize when I was in surgery was that my family had discussed shaving their heads when it came time for me to have chemo treatments. They did not want me to be alone during this devastating process. I have heard it said that a woman's hair is her crowning glory. You don't realize how very true that is until you shave it off. My appointment with the hairdresser arrived. My mom and sister Diane went with me. My sister brought her camera and a bottle of champagne. My mom decided she would shave her head first before I had to shave mine. She will never know how much that meant to me to have her show her support in that way. They made it an adventure filled with laughter and the sharing of memories that will live with me forever. My hairdresser gave my mom a mohawk before she shaved all her hair off, and we took pictures. When it came time to shave my head, my hairdresser cried because she had been giving me perms and cutting my hair for years, and she was getting ready to cut all of my curls off. I think it was more devastating to her at the time than it was for me. She shaved one side of my head, then we laughed and took more pictures. As a final salute to the loss of hair, we raised our glasses in a toast. When I arrived home, my husband and dog greeted us at the front door. I felt so naked without my hair. I kept touching my head in disbelief, as my head had never been that smooth. My husband walked up to me with tears in his eyes and told me how much he loved me and how beautiful I was. We had another head shaving party at my mom and dad's house. My brother Cliff brought his hair clippers and shaved designs on my sister Diane's head, and of course we took pictures. Then I got to shave my brother's head. Diane was always there to record every event with pictures. In the meantime, my middle sister shaved my niece Rachel's hair off, and she was a senior in high school. She attended her senior prom with very little hair. She had long, beautiful brown hair that reached to the middle of her back. All her friends at school thought she was ill when she shaved her hair. In my eyes, she was more beautiful than she had ever been in her life. My dad went to his hairdresser one day when I was staying with them. He didn't tell Mom or me what he intended to do. He told the hairdresser he wanted to shave his head. She said, "Do you want a level 1 or a level 2 shave?" That means the level of hair you want to shave off. My dad told her no. My dad told her to give him a 0, no hair. She asked him several times if he was sure before she shaved him bald. My nephews, David, Jake, and John, were 15, 8, and 7 at the time I was diagnosed. I was afraid I would scare them with not having hair, as they had always known me to have long curly hair. They took it all in stride. My oldest nephew, David, let me play golf with him. When my hair started growing back, my nephew Jake called me Aunt Diane because with my short hair, I resembled my oldest sister. My nephew John made a bear for me. He drew it on paper, and my mom helped him sew it together. We called him Irregular Bear because his arms and legs were different sizes and his head was not totally round. John wanted John wanted a pocket sewn on front with a heart-shaped button. In the pocket, he printed a note that read, "I love you, Aunt Bran." To this to this day, that bear means so much to me as it shows the love that my nephew had for me. I have many funny stories about this time. I believe if you can't see the humor in the situation, it will be tougher on you in the long run. One of the funniest stories was when we were at Mom's and Dad's house one morning and the UPS delivery guy showed up to deliver a package. We heard a knock on the door. Dad stuck his bald head out the front door, and Mom met the guy at the back door with no hat or wig on her head. The UPS guy must have thought we were some type of cult, as he took off running to his truck when he saw my dad with his bald head sticking out the front door and my mom answering the door with her bald head. After we all had our heads shaved, we picked a Saturday when all my family was in town and my husband was available. We spent 5 hours taking pictures of all of us bald. Those are my most treasured memories. The family I love dearly shaved their heads in support of me. Each time I look at those pictures, I realize that it is not the hair that matters. It's the love that shines from the heart when you see the family you love so much without their hair. How can you measure that much love? I don't think it is possible. After my leave of absence for surgery ended, I returned to full-time work except on weeks that I had chemo treatment. I thought returning to work would be the most difficult time, and I approached that day with much trepidation. You see, my crowning glory was gone. I had shaved off all my hair and had purchased several wigs to wear. You always think that everyone will be able to tell that you have a wig on. Of course, everyone at work already knew I would lose my hair, but I still had this idea in my head that they did know. And I feared I would have to face people who didn't know that I had cancer. And people would point and whisper about the lady with no hair or the funny looking wig. I had lost 8 pounds during my leave, so very few of my clothes fit. Everything just hung on my body. When I walked in the first day back at work, my boss Brad had a new boss who he was meeting with that day. When I walked in, he came over and gave me a big bear hug. I say that because my boss is 6'4". He engulfed me in this huge hug and tears filled my eyes. I knew at this point that I would be okay coming back to work. My boss was an attorney, so he is normally very stoic and reserved. You could tell he was thrilled that I was back, and that was exactly what I needed. I received more hugs that day than ever before. The support they showed me meant the world to me. I often laughed and joked about my various hats and wigs. One day around Christmas, I received a Christmas hat from one of my good friends at work. It was white fur around the brim and a long red pipe cleaner sticking out of the center with a white fur ball on the end. When I walked, the white ball on the top wobbled back and forth. I went in and out of my boss's office. He acted as though I didn't have anything unusual on my head. Another day, I wore a flower pot hat that my aunt and cousins had sent me during recovery. The hat was in the shape of a flower pot with big, long stemmed flowers sticking out of the top. My boss again just walked by my desk, told me good morning, and went right in his office as if I didn't have anything unusual on my head. From that point on, I wore some rather unusual hats just to see if I could get a reaction from him. One of the toughest things about chemo is that it affects your memory. The reason this was tough for me was that my memory was one of the things that my boss always complimented me on. It was very difficult for me to remember things he asked me to do. Often he asked me to do something. I forgot it as soon as I walked out of his office. I started carrying a notepad with me every time I went into his office. I wrote everything down. It helped me to remember things. I don't think he ever noticed the difference in my lapses in memory. By the way, my memory improved after my chemo treatments stopped. It took many months, but it did improve. I had 6 chemotherapy treatments. My mom sat with me through them all. I also had a girlfriend who came and sat with me. She would show up with French toast or bacon and pancakes for us to eat during my treatments. Because of the chemicals injected into my body, it was hard for me to be hungry for anything. Everything I ate had a chemical metallic taste, but Jane would always bring me something to eat. My mom always packed a bag with snacks for me. On those days, we sat and talked and shared many memories. It had become a tradition for me to cook dressing for our Thanksgiving holiday. I am from Louisiana, so everything I cook has a Cajun flavor. This was the first year that I did not have the energy to cook. My mom, Sister Sherry, and older sister Diane did the cooking. It was odd not helping with any of the cooking. We celebrated Thanksgiving with family and friends. Christmas was really special. We draw names for gifts in our family. My brother had drawn my sister's name. Her gift was framed pictures of our family photo session. Ball is beautiful. When you see the love that shines through when your family has no hair, it is an amazing thing. It puts everything else in perspective. Everything else is small stuff compared to your journey with cancer. The week of my third treatment, my grandmother passed away. This was a sad time, as I had not been able to visit her in the nursing home since my surgery and chemo treatments. I had a treatment on Friday. On Saturday, I rode with my parents for 6 hours back to Lake Charles, Louisiana, to attend the funeral. Hurricane Rita had just hit the Gulf Coast and Lake Charles in particular. There was so much damage in the area where my grandmother would be buried that there were no hotels within a 100 miles. We had to stay in a hotel in Lafayette, an hour and a half away. To complete the funeral arrangements, we had to drive back and forth to and from our hotel for several days. My grandmother's request was that her granddaughters, nieces, and great niece be pallbearers at her funeral. That Tuesday, I was able to be a pallbearer for my grandmother. I can still picture my sisters, cousins, and nieces all dressed in black, carrying my grandmother's casket. It had been an emotional journey. The fourth treatment came along. I was more tired than usual. I did not realize that I had a bleeding ulcer. On the Tuesday after treatment, I woke up not feeling well. I could not walk without getting dizzy. I called my doctor, and the nurse asked me to come in immediately. My blood count was so low that they checked me directly into the hospital from the physician's office. I was given 2 pints of blood and scheduled for a scope. I'll come later. They found the ulcer, uh, catheterized it, and then released me on Friday. I was back at work on the following Monday. I never missed a treatment until the last one. My blood counts were too low. I had worn my special flower pot hat for the final one. I had to go home and try in a week. I arrived for my treatment again, and still my counts were too low. Each time I had to call my husband to tell him it was postponed again. I could tell he was more worried than ever before. Finally, I arrived the next week, and my counts were good enough to do the treatment. I called my husband to let him know. He just broke down and cried. That evening after my treatment, I went home and sat down with my husband. I had not realized until that moment how hard the treatments and cancer had been on him. He had been trying to be strong for me, but at the same time, he sat on the couch every night worrying and praying. I finally understood what this whole process had done to him. In his being strong for me, he had been holding in all his worries and fears. That night, he broke down and cried over his fear of losing me. I explained to him that if God saw fit to take me from this world, I was ready. And that is what gave me peace through the whole process. Let's see. Okay, being human, my husband told me that I might be ready for that time, but he certainly wasn't ready for me to go. I explained to him that he needed to talk to me about his fears and worries because I could not make it through this journey without him. I completed my chemo treatments in March 2006. I had my 1 year checkup in March 2007, and I continue to improve every day. This cancer journey has taken me to places I never dreamed. I consider it a blessing from God that I have taken this walk with Him. I thank my family, friends, and all those who prayed for me during this time and have continued to celebrate the many milestones that have occurred since then. There were many who prayed for me whom I have never met. I hope one day to meet each of you and thank you personally for the prayers. I could not have made this journey without you. I believe God allowed this to happen to me for a reason. The prayer played a large part in my healing. It made me the people it made me and the people around me more aware of the wonderful things he gives us called life. This life I live on earth is by no means the best place I will ever see. One day God will call me home, and what a blessed place that will be. What a blessed life I have lived. Um, I normally, before I start read, I usually read, tell you some of these ovarian cancer symptoms, and some of them are bloating, your stomach uh, swells, backache. You could have a irregular cycle, fatigue, feeling of fullness when you eat, uh, diverticulitis, painful intercourse, constipation or diarrhea, indigestion, increased urination, lung issues, shortness of breath, chest pains because of the fluid around your lungs, and pelvic pain. The tests that you can take to see if you have ovarian cancer is it's called CA125. It's a protein marker, and there are tests that you take to see if you have breast cancer, and it's called BRAC1. It's spelled BRAC1, and the BRAC2, which is BRAC2, is the test that they give you to see if you have the genes for breast cancer. Some of the tests that they will give you, it could be one or two or all of these: ultrasound, CAT scan, sonogram, PET scan, transvaginal ultrasound, or you can they will give you all three of these: a pelvic exam, CA125, and a transvaginal ultrasound. And the treatments for ovarian cancer is chemotherapy, radiation, and you could be on a trial drug program. It could be either or all three of these. So I wanted to give you some of those symptoms for ovarian cancer. And I would like to just say, if you do have any of those symptoms or some of those symptoms, please immediately, when you notice something is not right, or you're having pain in your stomach, or you have the swelling, the bloating in your stomach, please, call and make an appointment and go see your gynecologist, because that could be the difference between your life and death. You can go from a stage 1 to stage 4 really quick, and stage 1 could be life, and stage 4 could be death. So please take care of yourself, women. Let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say. Just take care of yourself. The CA 125, it, it taking your annual your pap smear annually uh, will not uh, be able to let you know if you have ovarian cancer or not. Okay, so understand that. A lot of women think or don't know. They think if they get a pap smear, it's going to uh, let them know if they have cancer or not, ovarian cancer. It does not. It's only a test that you can take that will be able to let you know if you have ovarian cancer or not is the CA 125. And you have to request that if you have some of the symptoms or uh, a lot of those symptoms or something is going wrong with your body and you know something is not right, you can request that test for your doctor to give you that test to find out if you indeed have cancer. They won't just voluntarily give it like they do annually. I don't know why. They should, but they don't, and they haven't yet. So you have to ask for that test. So if you don't remember anything else, remember the CA 125, ovarian cancer. For breast cancer, it's BRAC1, BRAC2, BRAC1, BRAC2. The 2 is to see if you have the genes for breast cancer. BRAC1 to see if you have breast cancer. Also understand that if you have ovarian cancer, you can also end up having breast cancer. Did I say that right? If you find out you have ovarian cancer, you can also have breast cancer. If you have breast cancer, you may end up having ovarian cancer. Okay, so remember that. I think that was one. That was a pretty long story, and so I'm just going to read those. I always show these two books because these are the books that I read from. They're called Torch, which stands for Tales of Remarkable Courage and Hope. Um, so when I read these stories, these are the books that I read from. Uh, these books came from each one of those books have stories from 20 ovarian cancer survivors. They were survivors at that time that they wrote the books. Some of them are still living, some of them have passed away. So it's 20 women in each. They wrote their own stories. Some of them started from when they was diagnosed, found out their diagnosis. Some of them started before they were diagnosed. They went back before they were diagnosed and told the story up until the time that we had to turn the stories in for the book to be published. As I read the story, you can see how the different ladies wrote their own stories. Some of them was very, very detailed in their stories. Some of them was not. So sometimes when I read, there will be long stories, and then in some there'll be very short stories because they wasn't very detailed in their stories. So yeah. So I'm involved in this because my my wife passed away with ovarian cancer in November of 2014. And let's see. So yeah, so that's about it. I just wanted to go ahead and do this other story because there was a person. The last time that I read a story, I had to cut it out because I was doing a marathon with some other ladies, and we was timed, so I had to cut my story off. And there was a person that left a comment under that video and had requested that I finish that story. They were very interested in hearing the rest of the story. Um, I didn't finish that story because it's been probably a week. So I know, you know, after I had to cut it off, what I'll eventually do is just reread the story in its entirety. That way, I won't have to start in the middle of a story and read from the middle to the end instead of reading the whole thing. But I'll reread that story. But that person wanted me to continue reading the stories, and so I'm going to do that, and quite a few other people also. So I thought I'd do that tonight, and so I appreciate everybody that listened to the stories and hopefully get some out of it, because I know there's many people that have either have had cancer, uh, that's going through cancer now, who have had to take care of someone who had cancer, and know, you know, how difficult it is. And so, and then we also have a group, a support group here on YouTube. Um, Not for just ovarian cancer, but it's any kind of cancer and it's any kind of illness. You don't just have to have cancer. Like I said, you can have taken care of somebody that have cancer. You could have be a cancer survivor, or you could be going through cancer now. And we do this um, every 2 weeks. It's usually on a Friday about 1 o'clock. That's Central Standard Time. I'm not sure. We rotate different people's channels, so I'm not sure. It's supposed to be on my channel this Friday, but I'm gonna have to cancel that because I have a eyeglass exam at 1 o'clock Friday. So I'm going to either have to cancel or someone else is going to have to do it. So just pay attention and look out for it'll either be a cancellation or someone else to do it. But we do have the cancer support group. So thank y'all very much. I appreciate everybody that enjoyed the stories. I know they're heart-wrenching and touching. As you can see, they always get to me when I read them. But it's important to read the stories so other people can see what people go through, the women go through that have survived or that have gone through and may have passed away. But I appreciate it anyway, and I guess I will see y'all in the next video.